My parents hid my adoption until I was 30, so I found my real family and cut them off forever. Without explanation. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and for most of my life I thought I had a perfectly normal family. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where every lawn was trimmed the same way. Every weekend smelled like barbecues, and every family seemed to know everyone else's business. My parents were strict, but I always believed it came from love. My dad worked long hours as an accountant, my mom ran the house with military precision, and I had 2 younger siblings who seemed to get away with more than I ever could. From the outside, we were that family everyone envied. Polite kids, good grades, and Sunday dinners that looked like a commercial for family values. But I always felt slightly out of sync. It was subtle things, the way my mom looked at me when I asked about baby pictures, or how my dad would stiffen when old relatives mentioned when you first came to us. I used to think I was overanalyzing it. Maybe every kid just feels like an outsider sometimes. I remember one dinner in particular when my sister asked Mom if we could watch old home videos. My mother smiled too tightly and said, "Those tapes got ruined years ago." My brother just kept eating, eyes down as if he already knew not to press it. I laughed it off, made a joke about how lucky I was that no one could embarrass me with baby videos. But inside, a strange unease grew. There were no photos of me before age 2, no stories about my birth. Every time I asked, my parents would say, "You were just a late bloomer." I wanted to believe them, so I did. For 30 years, I believed every carefully crafted lie, until one careless comment cracked the entire illusion wide open, and once that truth started leaking out, there was no putting it back. It happened at my mother's birthday dinner, one of those noisy, crowded family nights where everyone talks over each other and laughter feels like armor. My Aunt Linda, who's always been the type to overshare after a few glasses of wine, leaned across the table and said, "I still remember how relieved your parents were when the adoption finally went through. You were such a blessing after their long wait." The room went silent. Forks froze midair. My mother's smile disappeared so fast it looked painful. My dad shot her a look, one I'd never seen before, sharp, warning, desperate. Then my mom laughed too loudly, saying, "Linda, you're mixing things up again," and quickly changed the subject. Everyone forced a chuckle and moved on. But I couldn't. For the rest of the night, I barely spoke. My chest felt tight, like I was watching my entire childhood replay in reverse. The missing baby photos, the strange silences, the bureaucratic errors on my birth certificate, they all lined up like puzzle pieces I didn't want to fit together. When we got home, I asked my mom what Aunt Linda meant. She didn't even hesitate. "You know your aunt. She forgets things. Don't take her seriously," but her eyes were wet, and my dad just kept staring at the TV, not saying a word. That night I lay awake replaying every moment I'd ignored, every odd silence, every forced smile, every strange detail I'd brushed aside because I wanted to believe my family was normal. The doubt that had once been a whisper now screamed inside my head. I told myself I was imagining things, but deep down, I already knew the truth was waiting for me, and once I started digging, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to stop. For the next few days, I tried to pretend everything was fine. I went to work, met friends, smiled like nothing had changed, but inside, something was unraveling. Every glance from my parents felt calculated, every word rehearsed. I couldn't shake Aunt Linda's voice echoing in my head when the adoption finally went through. Adoption. The word clung to me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. One night when my parents were asleep, I went into the attic. I don't even know what I expected to find. Maybe an old album, a document, something. The air was thick with dust and the smell of cardboard. I found boxes labeled family photos, and as I sifted through them, my hands started to tremble. There were pictures of my siblings as newborns, my parents holding them proudly. But for me, nothing before age 2. My earliest photo was a blurry shot of me sitting on my dad's lap, smiling, already a toddler. The next day, I went to the town records office. I told the clerk I needed a certified copy of my birth certificate. When she printed it out, my stomach dropped. The document looked newer than it should have. No hospital name. No doctor's signature. Just my name and my parents' names, like a clean, retyped version of something older. Something erased. That night, I confronted my dad casually, pretending curiosity. Hey, where was I born again? The hospital name isn't on my birth certificate. He didn't even look up from his paper. That's just how records were back then, he muttered. But his hand was shaking. I remember walking back to my room, staring at that crisp white paper, knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. If they weren't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself, and that's when I ordered the DNA test that would destroy everything I thought I knew 3 weeks later. I got the email. Your DNA results are ready. My hands were sweating as I opened it. Sitting alone in my apartment, the glow of my laptop screen flickering against the dark, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting, that the test would confirm I was just being paranoid. But the moment the page loaded, my entire world stopped. No genetic match with either of my parents. Not even a distant one. Not a half match. Nothing. I scrolled down, numb, barely breathing. Under close relatives, there was a name I didn't recognize, Megan R., labeled as a biological aunt. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. I checked again, refreshing the page, reading the words over and over like they might change if I looked long enough. But they didn't. I called my mom first. My voice cracked when I said, I did a DNA test. Silence. Then she whispered, Why would you do that? Not surprise, not confusion, just fear. My dad got on the phone and said sharply, Those tests aren't accurate. Delete it and forget it. I remember yelling, You can't lie to me anymore, and hearing my mom sob quietly in the background. After what felt like hours of denial and deflection, my mom finally broke. Between sobs, she whispered, We didn't want to lose you. You were ours in every way that mattered. My dad shouted her name like he could stop her, but it was too late. The truth had already fallen out. I dropped the phone. My knees gave out, and I just sat there on the cold kitchen floor staring at nothing. I thought I'd feel anger, but what hit first was grief. Grief for a life that was never real, for parents who'd built love on a lie, and I knew that from this moment forward. Nothing between us would ever be the same. After that night, everything changed. My parents came over the next morning, both looking like they hadn't slept. My mom's eyes were swollen, and my dad had that quiet, defensive posture, the one he used whenever he felt cornered. We sat in the living room, and for the first time in my life there was no pretense of normalcy left between us. My mom started talking before I could. You were 2 years old when we brought you home, she said softly. Your biological mother, Sarah, was my cousin. She wasn't ready to raise a child. We thought we were doing the right thing. I wanted to believe her, but the words doing the right thing sounded hollow. They'd stolen 30 years of truth and replaced it with a fantasy. My dad jumped in quickly, saying, We gave you a life she never could have. We loved you like our own. His tone wasn't comforting. It was defensive, like love could erase deceit. I asked, Then why lie? Why hide it from me? He snapped, Because you are our son. That's all that mattered. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity burned. You had 30 years to tell me the truth, I said, my voice shaking. You watched me live a life built on fiction. Then came the second blow. My siblings already knew. My sister couldn't look at me when she admitted it. Mom told us when we were teenagers, she whispered. We wanted to tell you, but she said it would ruin the family. The air in the room felt poisoned, thick with guilt, fear, and 30 years of lies. I stood up and told them I needed time to think, but really, I just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't reek of betrayal. As I walked out that door, I realized I wasn't leaving my parents' house. I was walking away from the version of my life they'd built for me. And there was no going back. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and silence. I stopped answering my parents' calls. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from my mom, my sister, even my dad trying to sound composed. But I couldn't bring myself to read them. Every message felt like a reminder of everything I'd lost. I wasn't grieving a person. I was grieving the version of myself they'd created. I'd look around my apartment and feel like a stranger in my own life. The framed family photo on my desk, my parents smiling, my siblings beside me, looked fake now, like a prop from a play I hadn't realized I was starring in. I picked it up one night and just stared at it until my vision blurred. Then I put it face down. I couldn't look at it anymore. Friends tried to help. One night, my buddy Evan came over with beers and said, "Man, maybe they meant well. You turned out fine." I remember snapping, "Would you be fine if your whole identity was a lie?" He went quiet after that. No one really knew what to say, and because how could they? Sleep didn't come easy. Every night, my brain replayed my mother's trembling confession. "We didn't want to lose you." Lose me from what? From who? What kind of love hides the truth just to keep control? Then, one night, scrolling through my DNA app again, I saw something I'd missed before. The same name staring back at me. Megan R., listed as a close relative. My supposed biological aunt. My heart started racing. I hovered over her profile, unsure whether to click or close it forever. But curiosity was stronger than fear. I sent her a short message. "Hi, I think we might be related. I'm trying to learn about my family." I didn't know it then, but that message was about to rip open an entirely new chapter of this nightmare, one that would reveal a betrayal even deeper than I imagined. Megan replied 2 days later with a message that made my heart stop. "Hi, I think I know who you are. I've been looking for you for a long time." Her words hit harder than I expected. I called her that night, and when she answered, her voice trembled. "You're Sarah's boy," she said, and I swear I forgot how to breathe. Sarah, my biological mother. Megan explained that she was Sarah's younger sister. She told me Sarah had been a single mom struggling with health problems but determined to get better. When she fell seriously ill, she left me temporarily with her cousins, my adoptive parents, until she recovered. But she never got the chance. She passed away a few months later, Megan whispered. Your parents, well, your adoptive parents, handled everything. They told the family you were being raised by them permanently, but they cut us off. We tried to reach you for years. I sat there in silence, my throat burning. Everything made sense now. The secrecy, the missing photos, the fear in my mom's eyes. My parents hadn't just hidden the truth. They'd taken me and erased the people who loved me. Megan sent me photos of Sarah that night. I opened the first one and my heart twisted. The same eyes, the same crooked smile I'd always been teased for. It was like staring into a mirror I didn't know existed. Megan begged me to visit, to meet the rest of the family. I hesitated, torn between the life I'd always known and the one I was stolen from. That night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was hollow, because I realized something even worse than being lied to. I'd been robbed of a mother who wanted me, and a family that was never given a chance to love me. A week later, I made the drive to meet Megan. It was a long, quiet trip, 5 hours of highway and too many thoughts I couldn't silence. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already outside waiting. She looked older than I expected, maybe in her late 40s, but her eyes had the same shape as mine. The moment we hugged, I broke. Years of confusion, anger, and grief came pouring out like a flood I couldn't control. Inside her house, the walls were lined with photos. Family gatherings, Christmas dinners, weddings, and tucked among them were pictures of a woman I recognized instantly. Sarah, my biological mother. Megan handed me one, saying softly, "That was taken a week before she got sick. She talked about you every day." My chest tightened. "She wanted to get better," Megan added. "She planned to bring you home." Hearing that crushed me. My adoptive parents hadn't saved me. They'd stolen me from a woman fighting for her life. I sat there for hours, staring at Sarah's face, memorizing every detail, wondering what my life could have been. Would she have taught me to cook? Would she have been proud of me? That night I visited Sarah's grave. The cemetery was quiet except for the wind rustling through the trees. I knelt down, tracing her name with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner," I whispered. My voice cracked, and for the first time in years, I sobbed, the kind of deep, broken crying that comes from a place no one can reach. I thought that was the lowest point, that maybe grief would cleanse the anger. But when I returned home and found a stack of letters from my parents waiting at my door, begging me not to throw away 30 years of love, I realized the real pain hadn't even begun yet. Because now, I had to decide what to do with the truth and the people who destroyed it for days. I couldn't bring myself to open my parents' letters. They sat on my counter like landmines, innocent-looking envelopes that I knew would explode with guilt, excuses, and emotional blackmail. Instead, I focused on the only thing that didn't feel poisoned: learning who I really was. Megan started sending me stories, photos, and little pieces of Sarah's life. Her handwriting, her favorite songs, the notes she used to leave around the house, all of it made her feel real in a way my parents' version of my past never did. One day, Megan mailed me a box labeled Sarah's Things. Inside were old Polaroids, hospital bracelets, and a small notebook. On the first page, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "For my baby, when he's old enough to understand, I'll come back for you." I sat there on my couch holding that note like it was a piece of my soul. I'd been told my birth mother was gone and forgotten, but she'd loved me. She'd fought for me. I started therapy soon after. My therapist told me I wasn't crazy for feeling both love and hate toward my adoptive parents. That betrayal from the people who raised you is a kind of wound that never heals cleanly. She was right. Some days I missed them. Other days I wished I'd never met them. Megan introduced me to cousins and uncles who welcomed me with warmth I hadn't felt in years. They didn't ask me to pick sides or explain myself. They just said, "We're glad you're home." For the first time, I believed it, but as I started to rebuild, one truth became clearer. I couldn't heal while still tethered to the people who destroyed my identity, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. Something final, irreversible, and entirely my choice. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do. Not Megan, not my therapist, not even my friends. I needed it to be quiet, uncomplicated. One morning, I sat at my desk, looked at the stack of unopened letters from my parents, and one by one, I slid them into the trash. I didn't read a single word. There was nothing they could say that would make 30 years of deceit feel okay. I'd spent my entire life giving them the benefit of the doubt, and now I wanted peace more than I wanted closure. I changed my number first, then my email. Then, over the next few weeks, I moved. New apartment, new city, new life. It felt surreal, like I was deleting a corrupted file from my hard drive. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of pretending. The silence that used to terrify me now felt sacred. My siblings tried to reach out. My sister messaged me through a mutual friend saying, "They're heartbroken. You don't have to disappear." I stared at her message for a long time before replying, "I disappeared a long time ago. They just never noticed." I never heard from her again. Sometimes at night I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to call them, to hear my mom's voice one more time. But then I'd remember her crying, saying, "We didn't want to lose you," and realize she'd already lost me decades ago when she chose control over truth. I started spending weekends with Megan's family. They didn't ask questions. They just made room for me. Every laugh, every shared meal, every honest moment stitched me back together in small ways my adoptive parents never could. And yet, in the quiet moments, I knew something was still unfinished. There was one final thread tying me to that old life, and it was time to cut it for good. Almost a year passed before it happened. I was sitting on Megan's porch one quiet afternoon, flipping through Sarah's old notebook again, when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. My heart sank. It was my mom. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, debating whether to let it ring out like all the times before. But something inside me whispered, "End it properly." So I answered. Her voice trembled the second she heard mine. "Honey, please don't hang up." I didn't, but I didn't say anything either. She filled the silence, her words spilling over each other. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought we were protecting you. You were ours in every way that mattered. I finally spoke. You stole me, Mom. You didn't protect me. You erased my mother's life. She started crying. We didn't know how to tell you. We were afraid you'd hate us. I swallowed hard. You should have trusted me to decide that. Then my dad's voice came on, rough and aged. Son, enough of this drama. You've made your point. Come home. I almost laughed. Come home. To what? To people who built my life out of stolen pieces? For a moment, I almost said everything I'd held in for months. The anger, the grief, the memories that now felt fake. But I didn't. I just said quietly, you could have been my parents forever. If you'd just told me the truth. My mom whispered, we still love you. I know, I said, my voice breaking. But love doesn't undo what you did. There was silence on the line, deep and heavy. Then I ended the call. For the first time since learning the truth, I didn't feel rage or confusion, just finality. The kind that hurts and heals at the same time. And when I looked up at the sky that evening, I realized something simple yet freeing. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I was finally walking toward my truth. A few months after that final call, I visited Sarah's grave again. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the grass, and the air carried that soft chill that makes everything feel a little sharper, a little more real. I knelt by her headstone with a bouquet of white lilies, the same kind Megan told me Sarah used to grow in her backyard. For the first time, I didn't feel like a lost child searching for answers. I felt whole. I found you, I whispered. It took me 30 years, but I found you. The wind picked up gently, brushing against my face, and for a moment it almost felt like she was there. Not as a ghost, but as a quiet presence, finally at peace. I told her about Megan, about the cousins who welcomed me, about the life I was building from the truth instead of lies. And for once, I didn't cry. I just breathed. In the months that followed, I started writing. Not about revenge, not about betrayal, but about reclaiming yourself after being rewritten by others. It became therapy. And every time I put words to what happened, I felt a little lighter. Megan's family became my own. Holidays, dinners, lazy Sunday calls. They never tried to replace what I lost. They just filled the empty space with honesty, with warmth that didn't come with conditions. I realized that real family isn't the one that hides who you are. It's the one that lets you be. Sometimes I still think about my adoptive parents. I don't hate them anymore, but I don't forgive them either. Some things don't need forgiveness. They just need distance. As I stood to leave the cemetery, I looked up at the evening sky and smiled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by their secrets, their control, or their lies. I was defined by truth, and that was finally enough.